Hello, students, and welcome to our second review video. So let's go ahead and pick up where we left off. So in the last video, we talked about the first three conversation strategies. And in this video, we're going to talk about the next five or so. So let's go ahead and begin. Conversation strategy number 4 is giving and asking for advice. So let's go ahead and review how to do that. So when we're giving advice, no matter what kind of advice it is, there are a few different ways we can do it. The first way we can is with something called modal verbs. Remember that a verb is an action word, and our action words here are should, had better, ought to, and could. So, very simple way to give advice is you should, you'd better, you ought to, or you could. These are all very simple ways that we can give advice. These are also able to be used in formal and informal situations. So I could tell my friend, you should do this. Or if I am giving a suggestion to my boss, I could say something like, I think you should, or I think you could. Adding I think makes it a little more polite and easy to hear. The negative form would be, I don't think you should, or I think you shouldn't, you'd better not. These can be used in all situations. And remember, adding I think before I think you should, I think you ought to, makes it a little more polite. We can also use formal verbs. Remember that formal means it's something we can use in with people that we do not know very well. We can use it with if we're talking to someone who we respect, and so on. Our formal verbs are suggest, recommend, and advise. Here, advise with an S, right? Which is related to the word advice. So we could say, I suggest that you, I recommend that you, I would advise you to. These can be used in formal situations, and if we want to make them negative, we can add don't, or say, I'd advise you not to. Remember, these are very formal. So if you are a boss, for example, you might say this to your employee, or if you are a teacher, you might say this to your student. I recommend that you do your homework regularly. Next, we have conditionals. We talked about these a little when we learned about hypothetical situations. These use the word if and would or could. So, for example, if I were you, I would. If I were in your shoes, I would. If I were in your position, I would. And we can also say, if I were in your situation. Remember that question? What would you do if you were in my situation? That's a conditional. It's just thinking about what you would do, which is why we use the word would. And if we want it to be negative, we just change it to wouldn't. If I were you, I wouldn't wear that jacket. It's going to be hot today. So these are some different ways we can give advice. It's important to remember that we should give polite advice. So we can use all those terms, the modal verbs, formal verbs, and conditionals, but we can give a compliment first. So when we learned this, we looked at it with fashion. I like your jeans, but I think you should wear a skirt. Your black pants are nice, but why don't you try a brighter color? This is also true for any advice. It's helpful to give a compliment first and then give your advice. Because remember, we don't want to make people sad or upset when we give advice. So we could say something like, "You did a great job on this, but I think you should um, have a longer speech next time." So we give a compliment first and then some advice. This is very polite. So now let's talk about asking for advice. People ask for advice in all kinds of situations, whether they're confused or upset or they just need help with something, right? So let's look at some helpful phrases for asking for advice. Let's review. We could ask, "What do you suggest?" "What do you advise me to do?" This is very formal. Remember, the word advise is very formal. So I could ask my boss, maybe I have a difficult problem. I could say, "Oh, what do you advise me to do?" Or, "Can you advise me?" We could say, "What should I do?" "What's your advice?" "Do you have any advice?" Or, here's our conditional, "What would you do if you were me?" So these are all great ways to ask for advice in any situation. Suggest and advise are formal, and these can be used, the rest can be used in really any situation. So we are going to just quickly look. So here we see someone, we're not going to go through this in too much depth, just a quick review. We see this person really wants to study abroad, but it's so expensive. And they ask here, "Do you have any advice?" And we see an example. Yes, if I were you, I'd start by talking to the school counselor. I think you should also talk to your parents. It's a good idea to start saving money now. So, asking for advice and giving advice come up in all kinds of conversations, whether it's about fashion or goals, or even just what to do that day. There are many situations in which we give and ask for advice. So, here's what to remember about giving and asking for advice. Always be polite. So, adding "I think" or giving a compliment first are great ways to be polite. Try to remember those helpful phrases, and if you don't remember which to use, it's okay to just use the formal ones as well. Okay, next is conversation strategy number 5, which is contractions and reductions. So you watched a video about this on YouTube from another professor, and it's all about how to speak English faster. So let's review the terms that we learned in the video. Contractions are when we take a word like cannot and it becomes can't. When we take did not and it becomes didn't. I am becomes I'm. He is becomes he's, and so on. This is one quick way to make sure that you are speaking English a little faster. Usually, native speakers do not say, "I did not go," or "I am going to." They would say "I'm" or "he's" and use contractions. Now, let's look at the rest of these terms and look at reductions. This happens when English speakers take phrases that are maybe a little strange to say, like "going to," and make it a little shorter and easier to say. For example, "gonna." "Want to" becomes "wanna." I could say, "What do you want to do?" instead of "What do you want to do?" "Have got to" becomes "gotta." "I gotta do my homework." "Have to" becomes "have to." "I have to wait and see." Have to. Instead of saying "have to," we can reduce it or make it smaller. "What are you" becomes "whatcha." We can even combine them. What you gonna do today? Instead of what are you going to do today, we could say what you gonna do today. What do you becomes what do ya? So instead of asking you, what do you think? I could say, what do you think? Where are you becomes where ya? Where are you going? Instead of where are you going? Would you becomes would ya? Would you like to know? When we have the D and the Y, would you, sometimes we just change it to that J sound, would ya? And I don't know becomes I don't know. So in these ways, when we can use contractions and reductions to speak English faster. Let's go ahead and look at a couple example sentences. Here they are without any contractions or reductions. And then we'll see when we add them in and listen to how they sound. Number 1, I cannot wait to see you. What do you want to do? Okay, that's fine, but how could we say that a little faster? I can't wait to see you. What do you want to do? So here we see we have a contraction. Cannot becomes can't. What do you becomes what do ya? And want to becomes wanna. So we can say it much faster. I cannot wait to see you. What do you want to do? I can't wait to see you. What do you want to do? Number 2, I do not know. What are you going to do? Becomes, I don't know. What you gonna do? And number 3, would you want to go would you want to go with me to the store? I do not want to go to the park. It is so hot. We can definitely make this shorter. Would you want to go with me to the store? I don't want to go to the park. It's so hot. So using contractions and reductions makes our speech faster and also is very useful for listening. And that's what you should remember. So here are our important points. You can use contractions to shorten your speech. Using reductions like wanna, whatcha, woulda will help improve your speaking and listening. And it will help you to understand native speakers and also to sound more like a native speaker yourself. All right, we're on to conversation strategy number 6, honest reactions. So, what is a reaction? If you remember, this is a reaction. It's your response to something. And let's go ahead and review how to react to people in English in different ways. So we'll go through these a little quickly. We talked about and learned 8 different types of reactions. So here we have agree, same opinion. And if we agree with someone, we can use terms like, I agree, or I completely agree. Totally. Definitely. You're right. Good point. These are all things we can say when we react to what someone says to us and we agree. We can also use absolutely or 100%. How about disagree? If someone says something and I disagree, I can use phrases like, I'm sorry, but I disagree with you about this. I'm not sure I agree. Perhaps, but I see what you're saying, but that's a good point, but I don't see it that way. So these are all ways to show when we disagree. Our next 2 reactions are shock and disbelief. Shock is when you're very surprised, right? If someone tells you something that's very surprising, you might say, what? No way. Seriously? Oh my God. I'm stunned. I'm shocked. These are ways to show someone that what they said was very surprising to us. Then there's disbelief, which is similar to shock, but it means you can't believe it. And you might say, really? I don't believe it. Or I can't believe it. Are you kidding? You've got to be kidding me. Are you serious? I can't even imagine it. So if someone says something that is hard to believe, you might use these phrases. And if you say the question or statement again, that's another way to show that you're shocked. For example, if someone says, "Hey, did you know there was an earthquake?" You could say, "What? Really? No way." Or you could repeat what they said. "There was an earthquake." That's another way to show that you are shocked or feeling disbelief. Now let's look at some very common reactions, which is accepting a request and denying a request. To accept means to say yes. So we could say, sure. Sure, why not? For example, if I say, "Hey, do you want to go see a movie?" and you want to accept, you might say, "Sure, why not?" You could say, "Sure, we can go see a movie." "I'd love to." "I'd be happy to." Or we could say sounds and then use a positive adjective. Sounds good. Sounds great. Sounds awesome. And so on. Yes, that sounds great. Now let's look at denying requests, which is saying, no, you don't want to do something. So if I ask, "Do you want to go see a movie?" and you want to say, no, you can say, "No, thank you." This is simple and polite. "I'm sorry, I'm not interested." "No way." This is used if maybe the request is a little unusual. "Hey, do you want to go to Jeju-do right now?" "No way." We could say, "Sorry, I don't feel up to something right now." Or, "I don't feel like the right now." "Sorry, I don't feel like seeing a movie right now." Or, "I'm not in the mood for a movie." The last two reaction types we'll look at are indifference and indecision. Indifference means I don't care. So I could say, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Indecision means I don't know. This or this, I don't know. So we could say, I don't know. Maybe. It depends. Or I could go either way. I'm on the fence means there are two decisions and I'm in the middle. So here is what to remember about honest reactions. Reactions are a quick and easy way to say how you really feel. They show that you're listening to the other person and are useful in all English conversations. Now let's go to conversation strategy number 7, which is honest judgments. A judgment is your personal feeling about the situation. So when you judge a situation, there are some different ways you can talk about that. There are some different phrases you can use when you are judging. So there are 3 types that we learned. So let's review. There's positive judgment, negative judgment, and neutral. Positive means you think that someone did the right thing or they did something good. So if I agree with your actions, maybe you tell me, yes, I saw a woman drop her phone and I ran to give her her phone. I could say, that's the right choice. That's a good decision. Or that was a good decision. That's a good idea. You're doing the right thing. Or you did the right thing. I think that's the right thing to do. These are all ways that we can tell someone we think they did the correct thing. You did the right thing. That was the right thing to do. The next judgment type is neutral. Neutral means in the middle. It's just okay, or we do not really care. So if you talked about a problem and what you did, and I am on the fence, I could say, it's not my problem. Lots of people do it. It's not a big deal. It doesn't matter. Or, I don't have a problem with it. This motion sums it up. Neutral is, no big deal. I don't have a problem with it. The last judgment type we learned about are negative judgments. This means that we think someone did something bad or wrong. So, let's look at some phrases we can use when we think someone did a bad thing. For example, if you said, oh, I saw someone drop their phone, and I took their phone and did not give it back, I might say, that's wrong. Excuse me. I could never do that. That isn't a good idea, or that wasn't a good idea. I don't think you did the right thing. You could also say, I think you did the wrong thing. If I were you, I wouldn't have done that. These are ways that we can tell someone that was not the right thing to do. So what you should remember about judgments is they show others how we feel about different actions and decisions. It could be my own actions, someone else's actions. And these phrases can be used to show and talk about our morality, what we think is right and what we think is wrong. Judgments are common in conversations with people we know well. All right, let's go ahead and move on to conversation strategy number 8. So we're getting there. Conversation strategy number 8 is talking about difficult situations. So when we talk about difficult situations, we use the present perfect tense. For example, I have been having a hard time lately. My friend has been lying to me, and she doesn't know that I know it. I've tried to talk to her about it, but she acts like she doesn't know what I'm talking about. What would you do? So here we see we use present perfect, have been, has been, have tried, and so on. This is very common when talking about problems. So here are some different problems or different ways to answer questions when talking about problems. Why has she lied to you? I don't know why she has lied to me. How have you been feeling? I've been feeling confused. Who have you told about this? I've told you and one other friend. Or he hasn't tried to apologize. So, something to remember about talking about difficult situations is we should include details about the situation, like what happened, why was it difficult, and why are you telling the story? What do you need help with? So, you should tell someone many details about a difficult situation because usually we are asking for advice, right? So why? What is the purpose? Let's look at this example. I've been having a hard time lately. What's going on? You can talk to me about it. And here's our example. My friend has been lying to me. Her friendship is really important to me. What would you do? And then some advice. If I were you, I'd be really honest with her. You could tell her that you want her to be honest too. I think I will try to be more direct. Thank you. So here we see we used many details. We talked about what's happening, what we have tried to do, and why this is an important problem. So when you are talking about a difficult situation, remember to include details, our 5 W's and H, who, what, when, where, why, how, because explaining the situation in detail will help the person we're talking to understand our situation and give us better advice. And remember, it's helpful to say why a difficult situation is important to you. So remember those things. All right, next, let's go to conversation strategy 9. We're getting right through. And this is complaining in English. So there are different ways to complain. If you remember the YouTube video you watched of a woman talking about polite, formal complaints and informal complaints. Some polite complaints were, I'm sorry, but I think there's been a mistake. Excuse me, I think there's a problem with. I'm afraid there's been a mistake. I'm afraid there's a problem. Or, I don't want to make a scene, but. These are polite and formal ways to complain. So if you are at a restaurant or out in public, you might use these phrases. Then there are informal complaints, which we use with our friends and people close to us. I've had it up to here. I'm sick and tired of. I'm pissed off. Can you believe that? These are things that we would use with friends or people close to us, any people close to us. Remember that this one is impolite. So only say it to someone, maybe your best friend. But otherwise, these are some formal and polite ways and some informal, with your friends kind of ways to complain in English. We could also say, I hate it when. I hate it when I think it's going to be a sunny day and it rains. So that is another way to complain. So when complaining, remember that there are polite and impolite ways to complain. Only use impolite complaints with close friends and family members. And if you don't know which one, how can I complain? You can always use formal language. This is true when giving advice or in any other situation. All right, the last conversation strategy we'll talk about in review video 2 is asking for clarification. So clarification comes from the word clarify, which means to make something clear, to understand, help us understand. So we ask for clarification when we don't understand what the person said or want to get more information about what they said. So let's go ahead and look at some ways we can do that. We saw some examples in the book like, did you say advice? What do you mean by X? Like where, for example? Do you mean your last girlfriend? What kind of restaurant? Or how jealous? These are great examples of clarification questions. And we can use those textbook examples to make our own questions. What do you mean by? So if someone says something confusing, what do you mean by that? Which is asking, can you explain more? What kind of? Da, da, da. Oh, I love music. What kind of music? How? Da, da, da. Just like we saw here, how jealous? We're asking for is it a little bit? Is it a lot? How? Did you say da da da? So if we did not hear the person, wait, did you say Monday? Is that when we're doing this? Did you say? Or do you mean da da da? This is a way to say, I think you are saying this. Do you mean? So here we see a couple examples. Let's look at just the first two. I'm sorry, but I think there's been a mistake. My icebox won't work. Do you mean your refrigerator? So here, icebox was the confusing word. We need to ask for clarification. Do you mean your refrigerator? I couldn't finish my assignment because the connection wasn't good. What do you mean by connection? Okay, I didn't understand that word, so what do you mean by that? I've had it, let's look at these as well. I've had it up to here. Informal. My friend and I had an argument and I'm so angry. What kind of argument? So tell me more about the argument. I tried to babysit some kids, but they were so annoying. How annoying? What did they do? So were they a little annoying? Were they extremely annoying? These are ways we can ask for more information or to, what can you say that again? To understand what someone else said. So here's what you should remember, the important points about asking for clarification. These terms can be used to get more information. We can also use these when we don't understand, what did you say? And we need the person to clarify. And these can be used in all situations, formal and informal. Okay, everyone, that is it for review video 2, and I'll see you soon in review video 3. Okay? Bye-bye.